We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesuvos Daf 103b. The Gemara here is continuing with the instructions that Rebbe gave before his death. V'hoshivu yeshiva la'achar shloshim yom. He says you should begin the learning in the yeshiva after 30 days after my death. Rashi says V'hoshivu yeshiva la'asok b'torah la'achar shloshim yom shel petirasi miyad. In other words, learn immediately 30 days after my death. V'lo tiyu asukin behesped. You shouldn't deal with the eulogy more than 30 days. And finally, Rebbe said, Shimon b'ni Chacham, Shimon, my son, he should be the Chacham. Gamliel b'ni Nasi, Gamliel, my son, he should be the Nasi. And Chanina bar Chama, Yoshev Barosh. And Chanina bar Chama, he should be the Rosh HaYeshiva. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Altis beduni ba'ayoros. One of the instructions that Rebbe gave was not to have eulogies in the small cities. Savar mina mishum tirchahu dekamer. They thought that the reason was because it would be a bother for them to have them come for the eulogies. Rashi over here says, Savar mina mishum torech devnei kfarim. Desmichu la'ayoros v'asal emes. There were the small villages that were near the small cities, and then they would have to go to the small cities. It would be a tircha for those people from the villages to go there for the hespedim. Kevan dechazu dekaspadu bekrachen v'kasu kuli alma. As the Gemara will say, then they saw that no, what happened was the eulogies were in the large cities and everyone came. Me'ayaros umikfarm, they came from the little cities and from the villages. Amri mishum yukrahu dekamer. So then they realized the reason why Rebbe gave that instruction was for the honor of the Torah, that would be large crowds in the cities at the eulogies. That's what the Gemara over here says. Again, they thought mishum tirchu dekamar, but kevan dechazi dekasavti bekrachim v'kaasu kuli alma. Since they saw that there were eulogies in the large cities and everyone was coming to them, Amru, they said shma mino mishum yukrahu dekamar. The reason why he's saying this is for the honor of the Torah. Hoshivu yeshiva la'achar shloshim yom. He said that they should start the learning in the yeshiva after 30 days. So lo adifna mi Moshe Rabbeinu, because Rebbe said, I'm no greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. T'chsev in the pasuk says about Moshe Rabbeinu, vayivku b'nei Yisrael as Moshe b'arvos Moav shloshim yom. It says there were 30 days that they cried in Arvos Moav for Moshe Rabbeinu, and so therefore the same should be true when it comes to myself, when it comes to Rebbe. And the Gemara continues, Tolasin Yomin Safdin Biyamama Vilelia. So what they did was, for 30 days they eulogized Rebbe day and night. Mikan Vo'elach Safdu Biyamama Vigarsi Bilelia. But from then on, what they did was they eulogized during the day and they learned at night. O Safdu Bilelia Vigarsi Biyamama, or the reverse. They might eulogize at night and they would learn during the day. At the Safdi Tracer Yarchishas. In the end, they ended up eulogizing him for 12 months, for a full year. Hahu Yom Adashkavte de Rebbe Nafka Baskol of Yomra. On the day that Rebbe died, a Baskol came up and it said, called the Have Bashkavte de Rebbe Mizuminhu L'chaya Olam Haba. Anybody who came to this funeral of Rebbe, he is prepared, he's going to be able to go to Olam Haba just for that action alone. Hahu Koves, there was a launderer called Yoma Hava Asikame. Every single day when Rebbe was alive, he'd come to Rebbe, he'd come in front of him. Hahu Yoma Lo Asa, but this day of the funeral, he didn't come. So Kevan de Shamahachi, when he heard this proclamation that anyone who came to the funeral of Rebbe is going to go to Olam Haba, and he realized he wasn't there, Salik or Igrav and Afal, he went up to the roof and he fell to the ground, and he died, he killed himself. Yatzda Baskol v'Yamra, then a Baskol came out and said, Afo Kove, so too this launderer, Mizumanu l'chaya Olam Haba, he also is prepared for the life in Olam Haba. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Shimon b'ni Chacham, Shimon b'ni, he will be the Chacham. And the Gemara says, Maika Amar, what does he mean to say over here that Shimon, my son, will be the Chacham, and Gamliel, my son, will be the Nasi? Hachi Amar, this is what Rebbe was saying. Afal Pisha Shimon b'ni Chacham, even though Shimon my son is the wise one, but Gamliel b'ni Nasi, but nevertheless Gamliel, who is the oldest, Gamliel my son, he will be the Nasi. Amar Levi, so Levi said, Srichel Meimar, does this even need to be said? You need to say that the oldest is going to be the Nasi. It's obvious that Gamliel is going to be the Nasi. Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, so Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe said, no, it needs to be said for you and for your lameness. That's a reference to the fact that Levi was a cripple. In other words, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe was saying, for people like you, this needs to be stated. And the Gemara says, my kashale, the Gemara says, well, what was bothering him? What was bothering him? What was difficult? Hakrak Amar, there is a pasuk that says, it says the kingdom was given to Yehoram because he was the firstborn. And so therefore, what's even the Havamina not to say that Rabbi Gamliel should be the Nasi? Of course he should be the Nasi. And so the Gemara says, no, when we're talking about the firstborn taking the place of his father, that's if he actually fills the position of his father. For Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel, he really did not fill the position of his father. He wasn't as great as Rebbe, and therefore it was not so obvious. There was a Havamina, there was a thought that maybe Rabbi Gamliel should not have been the Nasi. And the Gemara says, "Rebbe, my time of it, and so Rebbe, if that's the case, why did he do that? Why did he have Rebbe Gamliel take over the Nasi? Why wasn't it Rebbe Shimon bar Rebbe?" And the Gemara answers, granted that Rebbe Gamliel wasn't as great as his father in terms of wisdom, but when it came to the fear of sin, he was able to fill the place of his father in terms of his level of yiras chet. And the Gemara continues at the Tudat, Chanina bar Chama Yoshe Verosh. So Chanina bar Chama, he was appointed as Rosh Yeshiva. Lo kibo Rabbi Chanina, but Rabbi Chanina did not accept this position. Shahaya Rabbi Yofes gadol mimenu shtei shanim u'mechza, because Rabbi Yofes was greater than him and he was older than him 2.5 years. So Rabbi Yofes, he assumed the position of Rosh Yeshiva. Yosef Rabbi Yofes Bereisha. So Rabbi Yofes, he sat at the head. He was the Rosh Yeshiva. Yosef Rabbi Chanina Avroy, and Rabbi Chanina would sit on the outside. He wasn't in the position where he should be serving Rabbi Yofes. He was really as great as Rabbi Yofes, so he sat outside of the yeshiva. Also Yosef Gabe, and Levi came and he would accompany Rabbi Chanina, so he wouldn't be alone. Nach nafshe de Rabbi Yofes. In any case, Rabbi Yofes then died. V'yosef Rabbi Chanina bereisha, and so Rabbi Chanina now became the Rosh Yeshiva. V'lo hava Levi inish l'meisav Gabe, and Levi had no one to sit with him. V'ka'asa leBavel, and that's why Levi went to Bavel. V'hainu da'amri leila Rav, and that was what they said to Rav. They said, Gavra Rabba Iklal in Nahardoi. There's a great person who has arrived in Nahardoi, Umitla, and he's crippled and he's lame. V'darish Kalila Shar, and he's the one that says that the Kalila is the tiara. It's permitted to wear that on Shabbos. There's a machlokas in Mesechet Shabbos regarding wearing various things, various items. Is it a problem? And so he said that wearing the tiara is not a problem. We're not concerned that the woman is going to take it off and show it and thereby come to carry. That we're not concerned, according to Levi. And when he heard that, when Rav was told this, Amar, he said, Shema Minah. You see from the fact that this Levi has come now to Bavel, you see, Nach Nafshe de Rabbi Yofes, it must be that Rabbi Yofes died. V'yosef Rabbi Chanina Bereisha, and Rabbi Chanina has become the Rosh Yeshiva. V'lo havalei Levi inish l'meisav Gabe, and there's no one to sit with Levi. V'ka'as, and that's why he's coming here. That's why he's coming to Nahardoi. And the Gemara says, "V'yema Rabbi Chanina nach nafshe." But 1 second, how did Rav know exactly what happened? Maybe what really happened was Rabbi Chanina died. Rabbi Yofes kedi Yosef, and maybe Rabbi Yofes continued to be the Rosh Yeshiva. V'lo hava Levi inish l'meisav Gabe v'ka'asa, and Levi had no one to sit with him, and so he came to Bavel. How do you know which one of the two? How do you know that it was Rabbi Yofes that died? Maybe it was Rabbi Chanina that died. And the Gemara says, if we want, we could say one answer, that Levi, had Rabbi Yofes been the Rosh Yeshiva and had Rabbi Chanina died, Levi would have actually entered the yeshiva, and he would have submitted himself to, he would have been subordinate to Rabbi Yofes. And if you want, we could say another answer, since Rebbe had proclaimed that Rabbi Chanina bar Chama will be the Rosh Yeshiva, it would be impossible that he would not be the king, so to speak, that he would not be the ruler, that he would not be the Rosh Yeshiva. In other words, it had to be that would come true, and therefore it was obvious that Rabbi Yofes was the one that died. Because it says by the tzadikim, it says what the gezeira is made, what they proclaim, that is going to be fulfilled. The Gemara continues, V'ahave Rabbi Chia nach nafshe, but the Gemara asks, but 1 second, still, why wasn't Rabbi Chia? He should have been appointed the Rosh Yeshiva after Rabbi dies, and to that the Gemara says, nach nafshe, the Gemara says, no, Rabbi Chia had actually already died before Rabbi, and that's why Rabbi Chia did not assume that position. And the Gemara says, V'amar Rabbi Chia, but didn't Rabbi Chia say, Ani ro'isi kivro shel Rabbi, that I saw the grave of Rabbi, v'orati all of demos, and I cried tears over the grave of Rabbi. That implies that Rabbi Chia lived after Rabbi had died. And the Gemara says, Epoch, just reverse it. It wasn't Rabbi Chia that saw Rabbi's grave, it was Rabbi that saw Rabbi Chia's grave. And the Gemara continues to ask, V'amar Rabbi Chia, but didn't Rabbi Chia say, Osa Ayom Shemeis Rabbi, on that day that Rabbi died, Batala Kedusha, the Kedusha that became nullified, there was no more holiness. So again, the Gemara says, Epoch, just reverse it. It was actually Rabbi who said that about Rabbi Chia's death. But isn't there another brisa that says that when Rabbi became sick, so Rabbi Chia came to him, and he saw that he was crying. Amar lo, he said to him, Rabbi, Rabbi, why are you crying? So therefore, again, you see that it was Rabbi Chia that entered when Rabbi was the one that was dying. V'atanya, this is a continuing. Rabbi Chia now says to Rabbi. Rabbi says, "How could it be that you're crying? Didn't we learn in the brisa meis mitoch haschok that if someone dies out of laughter while he's laughing, siman yavalo, that's a good sign. Mitoch havechi, but if someone dies from tears from crying, siman ralo, it's a bad sign." So Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi, "Why are you crying over here? It's a bad omen if you cry, and that leads to that is right before that precedes the death." And panav lamala simin yafalo, the brisa continues, if the person dies with his face turned upward, that's a good sign. Panav lamata simin ralo, if he dies with his face turned downwards, that's a bad sign. Panav klape oam simin yafalo, if he dies with his face towards the people, that's a good sign. Klape akosel, if his face is towards the wall, simin ralo, that's a bad sign. Panav yurokin simin ralo, if his face is green, a greenish hue, that's a bad sign. Panav tzehuvin ve'adomim, if his face is like golden and his face is like has a reddish hue, simin yafalo, that's a good sign. Meis b'erev Shabbos, simin yafalo, if he dies on erev Shabbos, it's a good sign. B'motzoi Shabbos, simin ralo, if he dies on motzoi Shabbos, it's a bad sign. Meis b'erev Yom HaKippurim, simin ralo, if he dies before Yom Kippur, that's a bad sign. B'motzoi Yom HaKippurim, but if he dies after Yom Kippur, simin yafalo, that's a good sign. Meis mechole meyayim simin yafelo. If he dies from something that has to do with a stomach ailment, that's also a good sign. Mivnei sherubam shel tzadikim misasam bechole meyayim, because of the majority of tzadikim, they die from some issue with the stomach issue, some kind of issue with the intestines. But in any case, that was the question that Rabbi Chia asked Rabbi, why are you crying? Isn't that a bad omen? So Amar Lei, so Rabbi said back to him, Ano Torah mitzvahs kabechina. So he said, I'm crying over the loss of the fact that I can no longer learn Torah and I can no longer do mitzvahs, and so therefore that is not considered to be a bad omen. In any case, again, we have another proof that it was Rabbi that died before Rabbi Chia. And the Gemara says, if you want, I could say Epoch again, just reverse it. This was really what Rabbi was telling Rabbi Chia when he was dying. And if you want, I could say another answer. Liolam lo sipach. You don't have to reverse all of these. It could very well be Rabbi Chia was alive when Rabbi died. So why wasn't he appointed as the Rosh HaYeshiva? Rabbi Chia osuk b'mitzvahs have, because Rabbi Chia used to do a lot of mitzvahs. The Rabbi savar lo afagre, and so Rabbi thought, if I'm going to make him the Rosh HaYeshiva, then he's not going to be able to do the mitzvah. So I don't want to cause him that he's not going to do these mitzvahs. And the Gemara continues, V'hainu d'chiyav mincer Rabbi Chanina Rabbi Chia, and that's the story when Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Chia, they were arguing. Amar le Rabbi Chanina le Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chanina said to Rabbi Chia, Bahade didim minces, you're arguing with me. Dim chaz v'shalom nishta'acha Torah Yisrael, because if chaz v'shalom the Torah would be forgotten from Klal Yisrael, mahadron alem mi pilpuli, I'd be able to return the Torah through my learning. That's how great I am. Amar le Rabbi Chia, so Rabbi Chia said to him, to Rabbi Chanina, Ano avdi, the things that I do, the lo mishtacha Torah Yisrael, the mitzvahs that I perform cause that the Torah isn't even forgotten from Klal Yisrael in the first place. The aisana kisna v'shadayna, because what I do is I take flax and I plant it, umegadlina nishbi v'tzaydina tavi, and then I weave these nets and I capture deer, umachilna bisra liyasmi, and then I feed the meat to the yisomim, to the orphans, v'yarichna megilsa mimishchet tavi, then I take the hides of these deer and I make a megillah, I make a scroll, v'salikna lamas, and I go up to the city, the lesba mikri dardaki, where there's no teachers, v'chasivna chamsha chumshe l'chamisha yenuke, and I write the 5 chumashim for 5 children, umasnina shisa sidrei l'shisa yenuk, and I teach the 6 orders of Mishnayos to 6 children, and l'chol chad v'chad amri, and to each one I say, lay to him, asni sidrach l'chavrach, you should teach your seder of Mishnayos to your friend, and in that way I enable everybody to be able to learn, all of these children to be able to learn. These are the kind of mitzvahs that I perform. V'hainu dama Rebbe, and the Gemara says that's what Rebbe said, kama gedol l'maisa Chia, that the things that Chia does, how great they are. Amar le Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, so Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe said to Rebbe, afilu mimcha, are the actions that Rabbi Chia performs, are they even greater than you? Amar le in, he said, yes, it's even greater than what I do. Amar le Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi said to him, afilu me'av, is it even greater than my father, meaning Rabbi Yossi? Amar le said to him, chas v'shalom, lo tehei kazos b'Yisrael, chas v'shalom, no one should say such a thing in Klal Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Amar lehen, so Rebbe continued his instructions before his death. He said to them, Livni katan ani tzarach, I need my younger son. Nichnas Rabbi Shimon etzlo, Rabbi Shimon came and entered before him. Masar lo sidrei chachma, and he gave over to him the orders of wisdom. Amar lan, and then he said to them, Livni gadol ani tzarach, I need my older son. Nichnas Rabbi Gamliel etzlo, Rabbi Gamliel came to him, Masar lo sidrei nesias, and he gave over to him the order of the nesias, the order of the presidency. And the Gemara continues, Amar lo, he said to Rabbi Gamliel, Bani, my son, you should conduct yourself while you're a nasi with assertiveness, and you should cast fear among the Talmidim. The Gemara says, Ini, is that really true? Vaksib, but the Pasuk says, it says, those who fear Hashem, they're going to be honored. V'yomar mar, and the Master said, Zeh Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda, this refers to Yehoshaphat, king of Yehuda, K'shayaro Talmud Chacham, when he saw Talmud Chacham, Hayomed Mikisam Echabkom and Ashkri, he would stand up from his chair, and he would hug him, and he would kiss him. V'korei lo, and he would call to him, Rebbe, Mori, my Rebbe, my master. And so you see that Yehoshaphat, he treated the Talmidei Chachamim with affection. He didn't try to make it that they were afraid of him. And so the Gemara says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Habitzina, habifaresi. It depends if you're talking in private or if you're talking publicly. In private, you can act with affection with the Talmidei Chachamim, but when it comes publicly, so you have to act in a manner that's befitting of the Nasi and in a manner that will generate awe and fear. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Rebbe mutal b'tzipore u'makom muchen lo beveis sharim. So Rebbe, when he was dying, he was in Tzipore, and there was a place prepared for him to be buried in Beis Sha'arim. And the Gemara says, Vatanya, but we learned in a Braisa, Tzedek tzedek tirdof, halach achar Rebbe lebeis Sha'arim. The pasuk Tzedek tzedek tirdof, you should chase justice, means to say, follow Rebbe to Beis Sha'arim. That sounds like his residence was in Beis Sha'arim, not in Tzipore. And the Gemara answers, Rebbe bebeis Sha'arim havi. Really, Rebbe he lived in Beis Sha'arim. But when he became sick, they actually brought him to Tzipore, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Dalid Amud Aleph.